All right. Well, this is a dual collaboration podcast episode with my guest or equal guest, co-host. We're both co-hosting this. Aaron Griffin from Indiana. And he has his own podcast called What Griffs?
Correct.
Yep. And we are just here to really have a conversation. We want to, at least for my podcast, this segment kind of thing would be kind of to have a conversation, hear from fathers from all walks of life. The beautiful thing about podcast interviews is that we get to learn from people of other perspectives. And the reason I find it so beautiful is because we are invited into someone's life, hear their stories, and be able to distill valuable, actionable information, to everybody's benefit. So it doesn't matter if you're not a father, you can be a mother and still get, information that's helpful to you. That's the premise of these interviews. And my guest today is Aaron Griffin, like I said, and I'll let him introduce his podcast.
So I'm Aaron. As Sia said, I run the podcast What Griffs. My podcast is more or less kind of a what hits during the day, kind of an ideas, kind of a segment thing. It's one of those, I just kind of run with it. I don't really go on script at all. It's all off script. I just kind of, if I go into a rant, I go into a rant. If not, it's just kind of straight to the point. It could be a 5-minute episode, could be a half an hour episode. Just depends on the day. And then sometimes I take suggestions from people to see what kind of content they want to listen to. So it really honestly just depends on the day and my mood. So it's an interesting podcast, and a lot of people kind of look at me and go, "Why do you do that?" Well, it's freestyle, So it's one of those things where it comes from here and the heart.
Yeah. So, it's like flow.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'll introduce myself to your podcast too, because you're going to be putting that up to yours. Aaron and I met he was one of the first people to come out to the Noble Father meetup, and it's a weekly meetup that I have for fathers that come out and just hold space together, share authentically from the heart with one another. And man, it's been good. We're already on our 22nd or 23rd meetup together, and we've been pretty consistent throughout those weeks. And I am I'm still coming up with terminology of what to call myself. So I am a transformational alignment coach. Alignment as in with life purpose, with who we are, strengths and everything. And especially for fathers is that, finding that alignment is especially important for our kids, to show them how life on this planet is done, and not just kind of conforming to what the world says we should do. Is we should discover those things from the inside out. And that's what I like to do. And my podcast is called Noble Father Podcast, and it is targeted to fathers, but it's really just a more of a personal development, also going with the flow, and speaking from topics of experiences through the week, or things that I've accumulated over that time. And man, it's been a wonderful journey. And so that's about me. I got 2 kids, a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and I live out in Vancouver. Vancouver, Canada. So
yeah, you're out there a little bit from where I'm at, but
yeah, right. That's a 30 some odd hour drive.
Yeah, it's about. Yeah, I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah. I have 3 kids. One of them's actually just turned 9 today. And then, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and then my 5-year-old will be 6 this year. So, man, time flies. And then I'm, depending on the day, with my profession, I could be doing anything from talking to people all day to doing behind the scenes, just fixing the internet for mass amounts of people. So I'm kind of they call me a network engineer and then an escalations manager. So I do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you're just a go with the flow kind of guy.
I really am.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I mean, what's Indiana upbringing like?
It's a lot of cornfields.
Okay.
A lot of cornfields. So in my area, we actually have the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan. So, and that's not even, I could probably throw a stone across the highway and hit the sand dunes. They went from a state park to a national park. So,
Okay.
just this last year. So, I mean, we were literally right there at the lake. So that's kind of one thing by itself that kind of sets us apart from the other parts of Indiana. But for the most part, it's kind of just like anywhere else. It's you got your city life and you got your rural areas.
Mhm.
But I mean, for the most part, if you go out of the city, you got a cornfields and soybean fields, and that's really about it. Maybe a couple of trees here and there in between.
Yeah. I mean, is it possible maybe even because we kind of introduce ourselves, maybe tell us a little bit more about kind of your family situation? I know that you talked about your kids. I mean, is that something you want to talk about at all, or?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I can definitely talk about that. So, for you, I mean, we've been talking on and off about it. So my wife, obviously, she's got cancer. She's got colon cancer. It's one of the more aggressive forms. But she's in stage 4. And just recently we found out she had a couple of bumps on her lymph nodes. So we're gonna go do another scan probably here in the next week or two. I think is I don't know what exactly day it is, but we're gonna go check that out and see what's going on. But it's kind of interesting because for a while you kind of you get married, you want to live happy with the kids, and then all of a sudden you just get this giant wrench thrown in the middle of everything, and you're like, well, what do we do? And a lot of people, they let it tear their families apart, and honestly it's made us grow. So it's honestly made me grow, because I don't like conflict. I don't like stuff like that, and I get really angry sometimes, and this has actually helped me kind of smooth myself out a bit as far as a human being goes, and to kind of learn to accept things. So there's a lot of interesting things that I've kind of learned to kind of deal with and to go on with that I wouldn't have really learned to do, I guess, before this happened, which honestly could have been a good or bad experience to begin with.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, I mean, it's every other week we kind of deal with the chemo treatments. My wife has no energy for probably a good week and a half, and then she's got a good couple of days where she's feeling okay, and then she's back in the land of not feeling well. And lately the kids are kind of noticing a little bit more, but it's we just kind of talk to them. So it's just getting everybody to the point where they kind of understand what's going on, but we're managing to kind of go and deal with things. So that's where we're at right now as far as a family. It's just one day at a time. And I often tell people all the time, it's like, I get up the next morning, I put my head back on my shoulders, and I keep going whether I want to or not, because it's it's not all about me, it's all about my kids and my wife. So
Yeah. And it's an unconventional story. Not a lot of fathers' stories would go down that way. Well, I mean, let's shift a little. I mean, I'd love to ask about your own dad. Can you tell us a little bit about him, and you can share however it is you want to say it.
So my own dad was kind of, for part of my childhood, I guess he was, for the lack of better terms, kind of absent. He did a lot of long haul truck driving across the US, and into Canada and back. So probably till about 8 or 9, I guess, he came back home and finally just took a local job because he couldn't do it anymore. He was missing my mom and us. Me and my brother have a twin brother, which looks nothing like me. He's got all the hair up here, but not all the hair down here. And I got it backwards. I got the Gandalf for here, and I don't know, the Friar Tuck or something going up here.
I'm just flipping your head like upside down. Kind of
Like
imagine what he looks like. Yeah.
Like a chia head.
Right. Like what is that? Adam's Family, the lady. Sometimes she's
yeah,
Marge, and she's got the white. Oh, Morticia. Yes.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, it's something like that. But
yeah. Hey, brother, if you're listening out there, you're Morticia. What's his name?
His name is Randall. Actually, same name as my dad. So
was he first, or were you first?
Strangely enough, I was first.
Okay.
Only by a couple of minutes, though.
Yeah.
I kind of came out and pulled him out with me.
Nice. Wow.
More like he may have kicked me out first. I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
But no. So my dad was kind of one of those. He's an interesting character. So he's got his days where he's all jokes and goofing around, and then there are days where I remember he was just absolutely just horrible. And I was a little kid and just taking him off at every corner, but I remember some days he was just angry all the time, and just I don't know what stemmed from that, or you're a kid, blissful ignorance, I guess.
Yeah.
But he was always angry, so I think that's where I kind of got on my early thoughts and processes were unfortunately from him, and I just got a lot of the angry problems. But been working on it. My dad has too. He's over the last couple of years, he's been much better than he was. He's still got his days, but he's been much better.
Yeah.
But he took a local job and started working as with a tow company, and just every day he's just been he's a workhorse. I mean, he just every day, if he can, he goes to work. He's kind of like me.
Yeah. Right.
I get up, I go to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to anymore. Darn bills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an unconventional story for your dad, because like not a lot of people, a lot of fathers in that circumstance would be like, let's uproot something here. They just kind of go through and just keep going, keep trucking, right?
Pretty much.
Pun intended. Yeah, just kept trucking, right? And and sounds like he made the change, and yeah, that's also an adjustment.
It was a huge adjustment, for me and my brother. We went from not having dad for 4 months at a time, and just 1 week out of the 4 months, to every day with dad. And it's just like, okay, now what?
Right.
And then you got my mom in the background. She's like, oh crap, now I got to deal with him every day.
Yeah, I mean, and I totally know how that feels. Is I sometimes would go on trips, for the nonprofit side of things, and even after like a week coming back, it's like there's a readjustment almost, because it's like you weren't there. And I mean, that's just a week. You can imagine I don't know how long he was gone in your life for. I mean, it's 4 months at a time. That's a crazy amount of time. How old were you whenever that happened?
Oh man. Like I said, he was, I don't remember how long exactly he was on the road for, but like I said, I know he did it all the way up until I was 8.
Wow.
And my mom pretty much, she worked a part-time job. So, we had a babysitter. I mean, most of the time it was, family friends that knew us, but
yeah,
it was just one of those things where it's like, you don't know, my dad would come home, or we knew my dad would come home, and I'd be up, God, 2-3 days like straight. When's dad coming home? My mom would have to give me like Benadryl just to make me sleep. So I mean, even though my dad was sometimes not a great individual to be around, I mean, I still miss my dad,
Yeah, right.
So I mean, at least he was still there. I knew he was coming home. It's, I guess it's an interesting dynamic to kind of think of, because it's like, thinking back then, I take my dad for granted. It's like, hey dad, when I go see him over there, it's like, hey, what's up? But when I'm little, it's like, dad, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like, almost like we don't care about the faults, right? And it's interesting because that conversation has come up before, in like just among Asian families. Is like it's very, it can be hard sometimes growing up around with Chinese parents. They're very overbearing, but at the same time you still love them. And there's, you can't, it's almost like, it's like Stockholm syndrome almost, I mean it's not the equivalent, but
you're not the only person I've actually heard say that. I have a Korean buddy, and he's said the same thing about his parents pretty much.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's interesting to hear what goes on from around the world and what's so different about parenting, just regardless. I mean, you just, unless you talk to them, you just don't know. I mean, you might think that this is like, for me, this is normal for around the world. That's not.
Right.
And then now you're here sharing your like, and how that goes. I mean, I've heard that from another person. So it's like, whoa, yeah. Okay.
And you can ask me back. I mean, like, if you see threads, like, let's pull on it. Like, if there's anything you want to ask, like, man, let's back and forth here. Like, I'm open to share that too, if you want more information on that.
Sure. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, what was it like for you? I mean, I know you shared a little bit, but I guess I've not been present enough to really learn a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before on, previous episodes, and I talk about it here and there, maybe in the meetups, is the lack of celebration bit is something that is very prevalent in Asian families, not just in mine. My wife's also, I've noticed in other people. It's something that is, it's this notion of you can be better, you can do better. And so every time you do something, I'm going to tell you what you did better. Now, that strategy is good as long as you acknowledge that a job was well done. But when you don't do that, you leave a child wanting. And it definitely is something that I was left wanting with. Like, my example is the dishwashing rack. I always bring it up. It's like, it's trauma for me. I think I've realized it's trauma for me. And
darn dishwashing rack.
Yeah, that darn dish rack. I mean, like, it's like the Stockholm syndrome aspect of it is like always wanting to impress my mom, or always wanting to get her approval, win her approval that I did put the rack, about as well as I can. The perfect rack, let's just call it. I mean, it might be weird out of context if somebody just kind of jumped in, but like every time wanting to please her and always coming up short. And it wasn't like coming up short like, oh, nice try, but this. It's like every time it's like, let's go straight to what you did wrong. And it's always like a sigh or met with like disappointment. You know what I mean? So every single time I step up to do the dishes, it was excitement, eager anticipation for mom to come down, and then her inspection, and just never adding up to. And it's a subjective thing. Like you could say this one going here gives you 0.19% more space. Like it was negligible, right? But not enough to sigh over. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So I mean, like, so was it just they were? So I mean, do you think that they were doing that to kind of, I guess, prepare you for like the real world, or was it just you think it was just the mom and dad kind of thing, syndrome kind of thing?
I think it's I would call it more of a perpetuation of generational damage. Like she's the youngest daughter, and she has two younger brothers. But in Chinese culture, men are seen as above, I guess you could say. It's hard for me to say it that way, but it, culturally, just they were the, because she has 4 older sisters, then it's her, and then it's the 2 younger brothers, and then the 2 younger brothers would, be above, kind of. And so you had this weird dynamic where she was technically the youngest child, and her sisters were overbearing, and just she bore the brunt of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. That's, man, I wouldn't know how to act, I guess. I mean, I guess I can see a little bit. I mean, as far as that goes, I don't think that I've definitely had anything like that, but I was always kind of not the golden child, but I was always the child that needed to get stuff done, or you got to do your chores before you go out, or you didn't get a B, so you're getting ground kind of thing,
Wow.
And then like my brother was always the golden child. It's like he can like beat me senseless and be like, oh, slap on the wrist, or oh yeah, he gets a C, oh he tried. It's like it's
Right.
like
Like
how
almost like a
does that
double
work?
standard of sorts, right?
Yeah, like I remember, in high school, before me and my wife, obviously we got married, we were dating in high school. So she's my high school sweetheart.
Hmm.
I remember more often than not, hey mom, I'm going out, with my wife. And she's like, well, you got to do your chores first. And I'm like, but she's here. I got she's like,
Yeah,
you got to
right.
do your chore first. It's like, all right.
Mm.
And this was even after high school, sometime like before I
Yeah,
moved out. And I'm just like, and I just look at my brother. It's like, well, why can't he, do that?
right.
Well, he's busy. It's like he's sitting on his butt,
Yeah.
So we got that all the time, which was kind of strange. But, come to think about it later, in, I guess, in a weird way, my mom kind of groomed me for like the real world, where like because my brother has hearing impairment issues, and
Mm.
he's had issues, I don't know, of kind of learning certain things throughout his life. So I don't know if that's contributed to like what happened at birth. I don't know. But
Mm.
I kind of look back at it saying that, they kind of grew me for the real life world, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, were they too hard on me? Because
Mm.
like when I come home and I do, when I clean, I get mad because something's not spotless. Because
Right.
my mom was like, you got to clean it. It's got to be It's like, it's like I'm
Right.
home and I'm just like, my brain is just like on tunnel vision. It's like, this has got to be spotless. And
Right.
it has definitely caused some problems.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of sense that's very similar to Asians, actually. It's like they're so here's a good example. Whenever we were living in China still at the time, and my wife's mom was saying like, "Hey, I'm coming to visit," like 30 minutes before she's coming, right? Me and my wife just go to town on the apartment, getting it all cleaned and perfect, because we don't want to have that conversation of why is this not clean? Why is this not clean? And it's like, but there's what you come to understand is that there's no amount of cleaning, no matter how perfect it is, that there won't be something to nitpick.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of had. That's the other thing I had to learn for a while too. It's like and it's the small things that you think about after the fact. It's like, why did I ever get mad at that? And there's some days where I still get mad, and I'm just like, afterwards, you kind of sit there and you're like, well, that was stupid. Why did
Yeah,
why
right.
did
Like,
I get upset at that?
yeah, how did that? Yeah, and that would be a good next question for the both of us. Is like, what have you seen manifested from that in your fatherhood, or in the way you even interact with your wife, or
I guess for me, it was kind of more or less, especially because my wife came from a more relaxed, I guess, and as far as that goes, because she grew up with her dad, because her parents were divorced, so she was living with her mom, and at some point stepdad, and then I was having some problems, so she went and moved with her dad, and that became a big shift, I guess. So it was it was a huge shock and difference, because it's like she's like, she does this where I'm like way out in left field, so it's like, yeah, you don't know what to expect, so it drives me up the wall sometimes, and it's just like, okay, I don't know how to react to that, so I'm gonna be mad.
right? Like you said, you were like very like, how do you say this? Like you saw the line, and you knew how you wanted things to be, like exactly. So kind of like, was like almost as if like a perfectionist of sorts.
I guess that would be it. Yeah, because like I said, I would get like this tunnel vision kind of thing, where it's just like I was only focused on that. It's just like,
Right.
why?
So like, just like the analogy or the example you said about, oh, I'm gonna go out with my wife, but no, you got to do the dishes first. Like you just like tunneled in onto the dishes and don't realize that she's standing like right there.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. That's like I said, it used to drive me up the wall. My mom did that, but
Right. And then we just perpetuate it because, you know, it's I think it's a human nature thing. And I definitely do it too. That lack of celebratory aspect of my life, and let's just call it the trauma, that, you know, it caused me to be really hard on myself, and it caused me to like not celebrate any kind of progress that I made. Like, cause subjectively you can look at it and say, well, yeah, you created a group for 50 fathers, but only 50, you know, like you could, it's endless, right? We can say endless things to criticize ourselves, and we do.
and we really do, you know, and I think that's more on the society in general. I don't think it's even just, yes, I think some of that stems from the parents, but I think more or less it's more the environmental, you know, struggle, you know. For a long time it was, you know, the men's were the builders, the men's were the uplifters, you know, and then now it's kind of either equaling out or, depending on who you talk to, the other way,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's an interesting to think of, because now we're starting to get into the age where it's like we're trying to break that stigma of being men and just being, you know, sharing from our hearts, you know. And I think that's a good thing, especially on your end, that you're doing. I mean, so I jumped into the dads helping dads, and I was really gung-ho about just helping out and getting help, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then I took that step and reached out to you, and you're just on one thing, and it led into a whole
Yeah.
nother thing, which is awesome,
Yeah.
you know.
And for
And
context, you know,
now,
for people listening, like Aaron is number one on sign up for the meetups. He is number one. It's never going to be taken away, and he has shown up so consistently, and it's amazing. And I mean, you're now serving and doing different things. You've started the WhatsApp group for us, and you opened the Discord. Like, it's amazing, because that's exactly what I've envisioned for that community, is for fathers to really take it over, and you've really taken on that mantle. These were things that you did without even, I didn't even really push you in any kind of direction. You just kind of like, hey, let's do this, and yeah. So I mean, you are deservedly the best first guest on this podcast.
well, thank you, I appreciate that. It has definitely been a journey.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times where it's like I have an idea and it's like, I'm gonna run this by Theo, and then by the time I get done, it's already done and gone, and like I'm taking off with it, and you're just like, whoa, hold up.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Where did
that's
this come
interesting, because
from?
that's like it's almost like a training ground for you. Actually, even just like creating the fathers group and the podcast and everything is really imperfect action. And like, and I know whenever you were going to start your podcast, there was a lot of stuff with like, oh, like, what should I call it? What should the logo be? Oh, EchoCast cannot be used, and all this stuff. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but you know, like, just words, like, things were kind of getting in the way. But like, man, like, seeing the beautiful thing about the group is, and the meetup, is that I get to see, we get to witness each other's transformation. Like, even in you, Aaron, from the very first time you came, you're a different dude.
You know, and it is kind of interesting, because I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, and you know, I didn't know I was going to be, you know, in this dad's group, and just, you know, and then all of a sudden just take off in another direction with, you know, with a whole nother level going on with the, you know, with where you're at now with the Noble Father, you know, group, which is fantastic. And then, you know, I started, you know, jumping in and just talking to some guys every day and just saying, hey, how you doing? And, you know, we've grown, I don't know, that just in relationships all across the world, even,
Yeah.
you know. And then on top of that, you know, I started going to other groups for like financial stuff, and just, you know, I started reaching out for just in general, like my mental health, even, which is another discussion for later, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. Like, I didn't know what to expect, and then all of a sudden it was just like wham, it went everywhere and just blew up, and it's just like, I'm a part of this. Holy cow.
Yeah.
No matter how small or how large it gets, it's like I'm a part of this. And
Right.
I can always say that it's like, some great guys just came in and it just blew up. I
Yeah.
mean, is
Yeah.
that something that you thought was going to happen at first? I mean,
I
I know.
I I didn't. I definitely didn't. But let's what we should do maybe is let's go back to talking about your father, and then somehow we'll find our way back here, because it's a, yeah, like if you haven't gotten the idea, it's an amazing space. And anyways, we talked about the trauma stuff with your dad, and
Mhm.
my dad also, or my family also. Let's talk about something that's like, more uppity. Like, what was something that you enjoyed? Like, was there something that what did you enjoy doing with your father the most? I mean, you're in Indiana, so probably guns, something involving guns, or, you know.
So as weird as it sounds, so I used to actually ask my dad if I can go on tows with him when he did tow truck driving.
Oh,
Y-
okay.
And like, so we'd go and, pick up these cars and people, and I'd be sitting there riding along. And my dad, once we, drop people off, we'd turn up like the radio and we'd be listening to like AC/DC and all kinds of stuff. And
Nice.
that's the one thing I always remember my dad is just AC/DC and like the tow truck, or just random, just the smallest things, and like, oh man, what was the other thing? Or my dad just like randomly, he could be in a bad mood and all of a sudden he'd turn around and just act goofy. And
Wow.
then he would just go back to being in a bad mood again. It's just like,
Haven't
it's like,
seen
wait a
that in, I haven't seen that in you yet.
minute. I it's there, but it's been a long time since that's happened.
I mean, only to like a certain degree, where you're going from kind of like, hey, things are pretty crappy right now, to lightening up the mood, and then kind of, I'm guessing you end up going back. I mean,
It's I guess in a sense it's like my I guess I'm more like my dad, and I think I am. I do have those good spurts, and all of a sudden I do revert back. But
right.
later on I sit down and I think about that later, and it's just like, well, I guess that was a good thing, huh?
Yeah.
And then it's like you let it creep into your life a little bit more and more.
Right.
I mean, so what about you? I mean, what do you remember?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think another way to frame that question is like, because I don't really remember what I did enjoy the most doing with my father, but if I had to like relive kind of a specific moment with him, it's a great question. And my dad didn't really have much of an upbringing with his family, and so, he showed affection to us. All things considered, we were quite lucky. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what moment I would actually relive with my father. I think the one that I can really think of is, I was already later on in age. I was already 20, 21. I think it was somewhere around there, where so my dad's a pastor, minister, and most of my life, like when I was born, he graduated from Bible college, so didn't see a lot of him, right? Prayer, Bible studies, and all this stuff, and but I'm also like outside looking in, almost like I don't see those visitations. I don't see what he's doing. I don't see like the lives that he was changing or helping, and until I went to China with him, and that was in 2009. My math might be off here. I don't know how old I was when I was 2009. Anyways, we were there to do a camp for earthquake relief workers in my wife's hometown, and I just sat in a room with like 50, 60 other people, Chinese people, and I was seeing them all share from their heart of how profound and how helpful it was to them. These people were just random people that came together, just crying and sharing space together, and I got to see it firsthand, and my Chinese at this time was like non-existent, and I felt courage and confident to stand up and share from my heart of what I was seeing. And the premise of my share was that I've never understood why my dad was never around. And it was at that moment that I realized, like, the reason, because some of these people are working with victims who just lost their loved ones in the earthquake. So here I am, sad and upset, thinking that my childhood was terrible, that I didn't have a dad or whatever. In reality, I did. I was quite lucky to have him and to have him show affection for me. And in that moment was like, wow, Dad, this is what you've been doing this entire time. It was so liberating. It was so freeing. It just came out of me, and I couldn't hold back my tears, and I just did everything I could to try to speak and verbalize my emotion and my sharing in Chinese. Obviously, eventually I had to use English, and then my dad had to translate. It was kind of like a really profound moment for me, and that helped me make sense that I didn't have my father to the extent that I wanted it, but he was out serving others. And so it was, to me, I was like, that's a worthy sacrifice. That was worth it. It was like, at 21 years of age, that is worth it. That was totally worth it. And I guess that really kickstarted me down the path of this journey, I guess you could say.
So would you say that, in a sense, even though for a while he really, because I'm gathering from, he wasn't really a individual that liked to share a whole lot. So
I wouldn't say that either.
Okay.
He was quite open, and we were quite open as a family. We were, if there was anything that held, there's a verse in the Bible, it's like, don't let the sun go down, when you're angry or whatever. I'm paraphrasing it wrong, but every time we had conflict, we'd face as a family. I was disciplined by my father too, but it wasn't to the kind where it's like, oh, beat you, and then you kind of, think about what you did wrong. They'd always come back and give me a hug and tell me what did I do wrong, and tell me that they forgave me or whatever. They parented well. My only thing was just that I felt like I guess a kid, you just never get enough of it. You could never get enough of Dad, right? Every time you hear he's coming back, he's worthy of staying up 2 to 3 days for,
Yeah, and I guess that would be okay. Yeah. Phrase it that way. That's actually a really good way to phrase it. Man. So I guess based on that, I mean, did you try and ask him, I guess, beforehand, and just see if you can get a perspective even beforehand, or is it just something that he really didn't really have a good way of explaining it to you, or you just weren't really, I guess, did you even phrase it or even ask the question, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was never explicitly said, and I guess it was almost implied that we understood one another, but in reality, I didn't understand. I knew that he was going to China, and, or he's going to different places and doing different work, but I don't know, I guess I just didn't know the full extent of it, and I was selfish for Dad, of course, wanted Dad all to myself, and didn't enjoy that he was always out, and so, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, because how long was he usually gone for?
Yeah, that's a great question. It kind of gets fuzzy when you're 36 years old, and I would probably say weeks, sometimes maybe months. I mean, but then even then, sometimes when we're together, it was sporadic. Sometimes it was longer, sometimes not. When we were in Venezuela for the 7 years, he was out a lot for prayer meetings, Bible studies, so not super long extents. But then once we got back to Canada, and then he started going to China, it was it was 9 months out of the year he was gone.
Wow.
And so it was it was definitely complicated. We moved around a lot as pastors' kids, and you know, I think that's one of the things that really contributed to, you know, my story, is just that sense of being lonely and not really having anywhere where my roots are deep enough. And so that's definitely what has affected me as a father the most, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's transition. I mean, we talked about our fathers, and is there anything else you want to add about your dad? He's still living, right?
Yeah. He's still here. He's actually in the same town as I'm in. So
okay,
it's not actually. My mom and dad are both not even like 4 minutes down the road from me. So
oh really? Mine is like not even like 5 minutes away from my place.
Yep, mine's about probably 4 or 5 blocks from me. So yeah, it's just a kind of hop and a skip away.
That's cool. Yeah.
You know, the kids like that they're so close they can instantly let's go see grandma. It's all right.
Nice.
Let's go.
Yeah. And what do they do? What do they like? Do they give them candy, or what's their love language?
So it depends on the day, I've noticed. So sometimes it's music, sometimes it's just a really weird like arts and crafts stuff. I know the kids like going outside and helping my mom with just the garden stuff. They're always wanting to grow stuff at grandma's house because they got these big planters in front of the house that they grow vegetables in, and you know, or they would to be just all in front of grandpa. You know, grandpa's always got the snacks, so you know, so they all get the snacks from him, and it just depends on the day. It's interesting to see because it's like, what would you do today? Well, we did this. It's like, I don't remember doing that when I was little with this.
Yeah, that is the one thing I think that, like, I'm the oldest, and then I have a brother that's like 2 years younger than me, and then I have 2 sisters who are 9 and 11 years after me. So when I look at the way my sisters were raised, they're completely different from like how you describe the golden child. That is your brother Randall. Like, that is how I describe my sister's upbringing. It's like, I didn't have my first cell phone until I was like 18. My sister had it at like 11 or 12 or something like that. And when you go to question mom and dad about why that is, like, oh, what's different? They're girls. You know, it's like, what, boys don't get kidnapped? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Anyways, like, this is like double standard, you know what I mean?
It is. Grandparents, parents,
Yeah, and I think like, is it something to do with my parents maturing? You know, like, you realize that, because I mean, not that my mom stopped doing it. It's not like she stopped being so strict about the dishwasher. Like, she still does it because she lives with my brother, and my brother's like 30. He's 34 this year. So, I mean, like, to an extent, I feel like they kind of like mellowed out, I guess you can say. Right? Do you know, maybe did you notice that about your parents too?
Yeah, actually they did. I guess they kind of mellow out with stuff. Now that you think about it, yeah. I remember stuff that I do or my brother do. They get so mad, and like stuff my kids do, they're like, "Ah, that's okay. They're just kids." It's like,
yeah, right.
Who are you, and where did you take my parents?
Right. How is this fair? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I did notice that.
Yeah. You learn a lot from those kind of experiences, and then you also think about yourself. It's like, man, what am I strict on? And maybe that's a good segue to talk about ourselves, you know, as fathers. Is, you know, what's it like being a father for you now that we've kind of understood a little bit of what it was like growing up under your parents?
So the first thing I can think of, and it's the weirdest thing, I always go back to my mom when I was little, is just wait till you have a kid just like you. Yeah. Oh man. Being a father to 3 kids that act just like you, man, it's just like, oh my God, what did I do? And then it's like I look back, it's just like, oh, that's what I did. Oh no.
Right.
Like, so I mean, in that aspect, I can definitely tell you, it's like, it, you know, amplify yourself times two, and you got your kids. Oh man. And I originally, you know, I even told my wife before, I didn't even want kids before, you know. I was just kind of, you know, get married, whatever, just have fun in life. And then, you know, we just, oops, there goes, you know, kid one, and then whoops, kid two, and then whoops, kid three. And it's just like, okay, that's enough. Three's the max.
Wow.
You know, so it's like, it's interesting being a dad now, because there's so much to kind of dig through, and like you kind of want to take stuff from your own childhood and like what you saw in your mom and dad, and then you want to try and transition it to how you are, but it doesn't always work right sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
I just was like, okay, what do you do about this? Like, is there a rule against this? Like is there this unspoken like parental rule that you're just not supposed to do because of this? And it's just like,
Right.
you don't.
It's almost like being an entrepreneur of sorts. It's like you have this like this intangible to-do list, and you just got to make a decision on what is priority here. What is, and I think like, yeah, that's interesting you say it like that, because it's like when we were about to have our family and our kids, so, you know, I told my wife, I was like, you know, it's gonna be fine. Like I babysat, I raised my two sisters and my brother. Like I took care of them, and she always says, she's like, man, I was naive to believe you, because once the kid came, it was like, you know, like I was not on top of it. Let's just say, you know, I slipped the ball. Like I slipped it bad, right? And she's like, and she was the opposite. She was like, I'd make a terrible mother, and I would not be this and that. And I would always encourage her and say, you're gonna do amazing. And sure enough, she's, you know, like just like you said, like the line is right here. She's like really doing the reading and all this stuff, right? She's so on top of it. And yeah, I'm just the guy that was playing video games and just not being serious at all.
As fathers, I think it's one of those periods where it's like you have the kids, and then all of a sudden it's just like,
right,
oh no,
this is not as easy as I thought. Yeah.
It's like, now what?
Yeah, and mind you, I had my kids in China too, so it was like, you know, I don't know what I was thinking, man. Like I always knew I wanted to be a dad, but I guess I just never took it serious that I needed to be serious about it.
I think that's for a lot of us. I know for a little bit of time, like I said, it's kind of a growing period where, you know, your wife, or, you know, whoever's in an instance, just anybody, you know, whoever your significant other is, it's like, hey, get up and do this. Hey, get up and do that. It's like, you need to do this. And it's like,
right.
But why? And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I really need to get up and do that.
Right. Yeah. And like in certain things, like even just like weird, like, are you sure you should say that? You know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wait, what's wrong with me saying that? And then they go into it and tell you, well, don't you think they're going to do this? And then, you know, like, because even with my parents, like the way they disciplined us is different from how we discipline our kids.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a different world than our parents, right? Like I like to tell people whenever I was young, in one sitting, the most amount of times I've gotten spanked was 64.
Wow.
And we live in a completely different age. I mean, you can't even like lay a finger anymore, right?
I know. It's like you even like get close to it, and everybody's just like,
yeah, right. You're
whoa.
scared to do that in public, right? You're scared to even like
Yeah.
raise your voice a couple of octaves just to get them in line.
Yeah. Anymore. Like that's a perfect example. We actually had some lady, I don't know, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, my wife said that my youngest was just not cooperating, so she was like trying to get him to cooperate and corralling him, and this lady just got mad at her and started going off on her.
Really?
And like I told my wife, it's like, man, if I was there, you know. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't, you know, you don't know if this lady's ever had kids or not, or how, you know, if she did, how parenting happened, you know. So I mean, we don't know, but you know, everybody's got their own parenting style, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then you adapt. I mean,
right. But then you also can't leave it up to somebody to like, because it's easy for you to like see somebody like slap their kid's hand or something,
Yeah.
and then take it out of context that
Yep.
he beats this kid at home, and then call
Yeah.
CPS, and then in reality, it's like this is not even the case.
Yeah, and it bothers me that happens so much, you know, and it's one of those constant fears as a parent, you know, or as a dad even, because I mean, you know, big, you know, for me, big burly guy, you know,
Right.
my kids are all skinny, like skin beans, except for my son who's like turning into a couch potato, you know. But still, I mean, he's still small compared to me,
Right.
you know. So who, you know, it does get taken out of context so often. So it's like you're just, as a parent, you're constantly being afraid for, you know, your family, as opposed as to just what's going to happen next, you know, that you got to defend against. Now it's like the world you got to defend against.
Yeah.
You know, and it boggles my mind that it's gotten to the point where it's like, as a father, it's like you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what your rights are going to be. You don't know where something is going to go. You just don't. And it's as a father, that is just a huge unknown, and a huge, just, it's a worry.
Yeah, it reminds me of like grasping sand almost. Like you just like you're
Yeah.
trying to hold onto it, but it's just leaking out of holes. You just can't grasp it. And
Exactly.
everything now, media is starting to like push a lot of things that I don't think kids are necessarily ready for. I mean,
No.
you can't even tell your kids what their gender is nowadays or something like that. Like you gotta let them decide when they don't even know what a carrot is yet. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, as a father, it just, you want to sit there and you want to like contemplate the world, and there's just no context or no guide. I mean, if there's a guide out there somewhere that's going to help everybody, by all means, throw it at my
Yeah.
face. I want to know, but you know, just, there's no way of knowing. And it's always that constant fear of what is your kid gonna come home and say? And it's just like, okay, now,
right.
wait a minute. Where
Right.
did you hear that? Why did you hear that? What is going on? You know,
Yeah.
it's an ever evolving situation. And I don't know how you feel about it, but it's like, it's interesting at the same time, but it's also fear. It puts fear,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and in the flesh. It's just, it's weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting because, you know, we took our son out of grade 1. So we took him out, so we'd homeschool him, because some of the things that we were hearing as we were walking to school were just like, okay, no, like I don't want to do that. And also we have a weird curriculum here in Canada where it's like they have to teach LGBT and all this other stuff, like inclusiveness, in the school curriculum. And I mean, it's a curriculum that you can question, which I'm like, okay, cool, you can question it, but then you're not allowed to question who the teacher's going to be. So if the teacher is a, you know, flaming drag queen and, you know, wants to impress on the kid, like, what's stopping them from? So here's some context, is that we actually have some friends who have friends that had a kid in school, and actually came home and said that they no longer identify as a boy. It was a grade 2 kid. And so, you know, how this curriculum is taught is it's like, okay, if you are a boy and you want to play with dolls, that's actually okay. You might identify as a girl. Like, that kind of suggestive programming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, my son, you know, my youngest, he's still, you know, he still plays with dolls, you know, with my daughter, you know. I mean, he's 5, you know.
Right.
Or like, he sits down with my daughter and like he'll get his nails painted and stuff, but he still knows he's a boy. And he's like, I don't get that.
Right.
I don't.
And it's interesting because when you think about it, it seems more targeted towards the male side than the girl side, right? A girl is allowed to be a tomboy, and if she picks up a football and throws a spiral with it, like, she's nobody would think that she identifies as a boy.
Right.
Whereas a boy playing with a girl toy or gets their nails painted once, like, then, you know.
That's kind of an interesting point, because I guess I never really thought about that.
Well, I mean, and when I think about that, it's like, well, I mean, we're going down really deep on this, because it's like,
yeah,
men, right? Everything seems to be targeting men, and I think it's a worthwhile segue, because I don't like.
Yeah.
I like these conversations to flow naturally, and this is a good topic to talk about, because, like, just think about how many things target men nowadays, right?
Oh,
Societal pressures, pornography,
yeah,
male audience dominated. You got males in prisons, population of prison inmates. You have murder rates among men are higher than women. What is it, like 10-1 or 9-1 or something like that?
Yeah, it's something like outrageous.
Right. And so, that's I gotta learn to, like, turn those things off before the podcast. Yeah, like everything is targeting us, like, toxic masculinity and all this other stuff. Like, it only took until what, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and Will Smith and what's her face to, like, raise the idea that, women can be toxic too. And then, not to mention custody battles, man. We're in the midst of hearing that in our group of a couple of men just, like, dealing with those kind of things. It's like, it's so anti-man. It
is, and, like, it just, over here in general, I see so many things are like, I mean, actually, we have a coworker who is going through it at work, like, just, and he's okay with me sharing it. I've actually talked about this before with others, but he's been battling just custody of getting his kids for the longest time. And, the state of Indiana is always mom first, but the mom in this aspect, it was putting the kids in danger, and they still gave the kids to her because it was mom first, even though they had the proof. And it's just like, well, they need to be with their mom. And it's like, but mom's the one who's causing these problems.
Right.
And, like, he's still fighting. And, like, Indiana's like, well, unless you have absolute proof. And they're like, well, we do. We gave it to you. And they're just like, well, we don't recognize it as that. And it's just like, how does that even? It's like, oh, it's infuriating.
Right. It's like our evidence has to be like 4 or 5 times stronger than it needs to be. Whereas they can just say, he did this, and then they'll take their word for it.
Exactly. And then there's some states where it's equal rights, and there's some states where it's actually the opposite, which is really nice, but you don't see that too often. But yeah, I mean, like, there's so much that targets men, and so much that goes against, the, dads. And it's one of those things where it's like, you're trying to change the world one person at a time. And it's just like, it's almost impossible.
Right. Well, then maybe that's a good conversation to have too. Is like, you have 2 boys yourself. And I mean, you're not just raising them to be self-sufficient. You're raising them to be good fathers too one day. What are your thoughts about that? Like, what do you think of that? Like, it must be daunting, obviously.
It's, to be honest, it's really not one of those thoughts that have actually crossed my mind too often. It's one of those thoughts where it's like, I know it's there. It's in the back of my head, and it's kind of like, it's nagging at me. So, I mean, obviously sooner or later it's going to come out, but
right.
I guess in a sense, it's like, I want them to do what's right. Just, it doesn't matter. Just do what's right.
Right.
Period. Whether somebody else thinks it's wrong, if it's right and it's right and it's truthful and it's 100%, just do it. If it's a friend and they're mad, whatever situation is going on, I don't care. It's like, if you're doing it 100% with your heart and it's truth, by all means, burn that bridge.
Right.
Obviously something's wrong in the first place that's getting to that point, but it, at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where it's like, it's almost situational, and you almost have to go based on, hey, Dad, I need advice. And then at that point, it's like, okay, uh,
Yeah.
let's sit down and talk about it then.
I almost think they can't, like they can't go wrong of sorts sometimes. It sounds kind of mumbo jumbo fairy stuff, but like, I think that like we just gotta like really trust that they can handle it. And that was one of the things whenever we put them back into school was like, actually, when we pulled them out, people were like, are you doing that because you are scared that, or you're not willing to face those things when it comes up? Like, are you out of fear keeping him away from those circumstances so he can't face it entirely? And when we thought about that, it was like, that's a good point. He's gonna have to face it one day, and it really comes down to us. It's just like the spanking thing. You can spank your kids and then leave them be, or you can spank them and then tell them, reason with them and talk to them why we discipline and why we need to do this. And so even just for that LGBT stuff, it's like, okay, son, you're gonna go to school, they're gonna teach some things that we do not agree with, and it presents a parenting opportunity rather than saying that's wrong and we need to keep you away from it. Like growing up, my parents kept me away from school because of Halloween. Halloween was a day off because they didn't like us. My mom didn't like us going there and celebrating whatever, skeletons and dressing up and blood and all this stuff. And that made me really curious, that made me really kind of caused me to whiplash, a slingshot into wanting to learn more about it. You know what I mean?
It almost seems like it does the opposite of what they're actually trying to keep you away from. And that's an interesting topic, because it's like you don't know what your kids are going to want to experience until you push them the furthest away.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
Oh man. And it, like, even me growing up, I kind of look back at that sometimes, and and I still see that now with my kids as young as they are. It's like, or it's like you have that phrase where it's like, oh, you don't want to use it, but it's like, because I told you to. That's another thing,
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want you to do this because I told you to. Right. It's like, oh, I shouldn't use that.
That is a dangerous phrase to use, right? Because it's like, because at some point our kid's logic is going to be like, but Dad, I seen you do it once.
Yep.
Or, Dad, I see you not make a big deal out of, your friend was smoking weed right in your face. You guys were just having a good old time, and you didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Those are the worst to get called out like that. I mean, I get called out by my wife, but like to get called out by your kid, that's something else.
I've had a couple of occasions where my kids are like, but Dad, you did. It's like,
oh, yes, I have too. Now that you mention it, I definitely have. My kid's only 7. So.
But you don't, it's like, until they call you out on it, you have no idea.
Right.
And then it's like, it pierces your soul and your heart, and you're just like,
I have no comeback. Yeah. Touche.
Whoa. That's the other interesting being about Dad. It's just like, some of the things that your kids say that they pick up on, man, that they are sponges.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes you don't think that they understand something, and they understand it well enough, and it's just like, that makes sense.
Right.
Like my kids, my oldest said something the other day, and I'm like, I sat down and tried to process it for a little bit, and I'm like, you know what, that makes sense, and I absolutely hate it.
Right.
And then it's like, all right, let me go have a conversation with my kid now.
Right.
Why
did you do this, Daddy? Yeah.
It does. It pierces your heart and your soul, and it's just like, they are truthful to a fault, even.
Well, if you think about it, that is what we want.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is the goal. That is the destination. You want them to call you out. You want to raise a son or a daughter who is going to call you out on those things.
Yep. Kids, I feel like they bring the best and the worst out of you all at the same time. And there's like, and sometimes even the middle of the road, and it's just like, you just like, if they call you out on something, you have no idea, and it's just like, hey. Yeah,
I feel like that question also answers, like that answer almost answers like, what's the most and least enjoyable part of being a father?
Yeah. Or like even like on days that you're having bad days, it's just like your kids come up to you and they give you this big hug because they don't know what's wrong, but they bring the best out of it because it's like they come up to you and they give you this big old heartfelt, like non-conditional hug. And it's just like, what's that for? Well, you look like you're not feeling good, Dad, or you look like you're down. It's like, okay. It is being a dad is such a blessing. And it's also sometimes it can be, and I hate to phrase it this way, but I say it, but it can be a curse sometimes too.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of fathers agree with that.
Yeah.
In some way they'll agree. Yeah, it can be a curse sometimes.
Yep.
But I mean, like, it's funny because you have to experience the lows to experience the highs, and to appreciate the highs. And man, fatherhood is definitely one of those things.
It is. It's just, it is interesting. It's I don't really know, and I've been trying to find a way to kind of phrase this, but I don't think there's a way to really to phrase it. You just kind of more or less you have to experience it in order to be what an actual father and a dad feels like.
Yeah,
I guess that'd be the best way to put it, I guess, as what it feels like to be a dad and a father.
Yeah, I mean, a question that always bugs me whenever I think about it is like, there's a correlation between man and fatherhood. Would you say that being a father is the epitome of being the best man you can be?
I would say yes. And it kind of goes back to a little bit of what I touched about the kids, again, the kids bring the best and the worst out of you.
Right.
And it just, you don't know your limits until you experience that, being a father and being a man, you don't know what lengths that you would go to protect your kids and your family, until you have your kids, until you have that thing you want to protect the most. If your priorities are in the right place, you want to do the absolute most that you can to protect them kids. It doesn't matter at all cost.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Whenever I think of that question, sometimes I'm like, well, what are the examples of men out there who have not become fathers, and yet society would deem them as made it? You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
Like, what would you have to do as a man to know that you've made it without having been a father? I don't have answers either. I mean, I'm just throwing these out because this is interesting conversation we're having here.
That's interesting. I am like trying to like search deep. I got nothing. Yeah. It's just not returning anything.
I don't even know the answer either. Like I don't. I mean, it's a subjective thing, maybe. I think like.
And for the most part, I feel like it probably would be. I mean, for us, not being a father now, you wouldn't be able to picture it, but yeah. You probably could, but it wouldn't be ideal, I guess, for you at that point. Cause you love your kids, you love your family, but at the same time, I guess for every man at one point, they probably had that, they're just like, so tired and just being done with it. A newborn is just like, man, if only I didn't have this kid.
Right.
I guess in that aspect, it's like, okay, you have those thoughts, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, you have this life that you're holding, and it's just like, I'm mad at you, but I love you to death.
Right. It's like the curse, right? Thing.
Yeah.
I love you, but I curse you too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I guess in a sense it would be a very subjective thing, but but for a man to not have a kid, they don't know. I mean, they might know what they think is love, but I don't feel like they would know, like, to the deepest core, I guess, in a sense, what love is until you have that kid and you want to hold that kid and you want to love that kid,
Right.
But again, that's subjective. I mean, for us, for dads,
Yeah. Are we prioritizing more on, that sacrificial love? I'm not saying men who are not fathers are less of a man. I'm just saying, like, being a father is, man, it's part of the experience. I mean, it sounds bad, right? But that's not what I'm trying to say. I can't see.
Oh no, you're saying it. No,
I'm saying it. Yeah, I'm saying. Okay, I am saying it. You better be a father. Yeah, if you're waiting, like if you're, yeah. See, that's one thing is that when you said, well, what would you be like right now if you didn't have kids? I'd probably say I'd be very lonely, very selfish, and just, yeah, it would be a, like, well, and I don't want to, talk negatively of people that don't have kids who are married, and but a lot of the explanations or the reasons why they don't have it yet, and I'm sure you've heard this in some form or another, is like, I want to travel the world, I enjoy my sleep, I have career dreams. Like they're all just like me reasons,
Right.
And it's sad actually, because in Japan now apparently there's more pets than there are newborns, like than children.
Wow.
It's like people don't want to have kids, and it's happening in China too. They relaxed the one child policy, and
okay,
nobody had more kids. It gave an influx, but not to the extent that they wanted it, and then they removed it entirely, and it still didn't do anything.
Wow.
We're coming to this place where it's like abortions are, they're still happening. I don't care where you are in the world, they're still happening, and now people are not having kids. The world's society pressure is getting bigger and bigger, and how do you support that? Like, it's so anti-baby, anti-man, right?
It's anti a lot of things. I mean,
yeah.
It comes back to that society thing. It's like you want to make the changes, and you just there's a lot of push to want to make the changes, but there's not, at least known, there's not a lot of ability to make that change at the same time. It's weird. It's like a Renaissance period, but without the crowd.
Yeah, right. And not so suave either.
Yeah, right.
And that's a cool, because like, so one of the questions that I had prepared for this segment that I thought was really interesting would be like, if you had one wish that you had left from like a dad genie, and you wanted to change the world as it relates to fatherhood, what would you ask for? Like, and some prompts could be like, oh, I'd take away this, or I'd add something. Like, what do you feel would make the biggest difference?
Ooh, that is, man. That is interesting. Honestly, I want to, the one wish I wish I could give every dad, just in general, is just to feel the capacity of love that you can get and give from your kids, and just amplify that. Because I mean, even you can't think that even the dad that walks away, you can't think for a minute that they don't want nothing to do with that kid, period. Whatever the situation is, I don't care who you are, you help create that child. Let every father, when that child is born, feel both the joy and the love, but also, and I wouldn't wish it on my enemy, but also feel the heartache that your kid gets when you leave. I guess a double whammy on that one.
So I'm just trying to rephrase that, kind of like an amplification of both the love and the departure of being a father.
Yeah. I guess that would be the one thing that I would wish for. Every time I look at my kids, even if I'm having a bad day, or my kid put me in rough shape, it's just like I want to look at him. It's like, but at the same time, it's like, I love you so much. Even though I want to like go in the corner. I love you so much. Go in the corner.
Right.
I don't ever get mad enough at my kids to want to, to ever want to, feel anything, negative towards them. But at the same time, it's like,
Right.
that hug or that dad, I love you thing just instantly just turns you.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's about where I'm at. I mean, so I guess back to you.
Well, one second. I'm going to turn on some lights here. If I can reach it.
Stretch.
This is not good for production.
Inspector Gadget.
Yeah, what do you want to play? Not this like weird Celtic tavern music. Oh man, yeah. What would I? I'm gonna be asking this question a lot. I think that, and maybe not every father will, answer. I feel like if, and certainly our conversation presented itself in that way. Yeah, like what would I take away? I mean, you can have endless answers, right? I guess I could answer it every single time.
Yeah.
If I wanted to change the world as it relates to father, wow, I mean, if any wish, I would take away financial pressure. Like this, there's no reliance on money, because I feel like that comes up so much in. But then I guess, yeah, I can't just take that away and then expect the world to appreciate, the hardship of being an entrepreneur or, whatever. Like there's reason these things are there. So I guess maybe my answer would be to like be able to, I don't know. Let's just say money this time.
I mean, that is a good one. I don't know how many times I've heard friends, we're waiting until we're more financially stable. It's like, if you're waiting that long, you're going to be waiting too long.
Right. Like my kids are going to graduate when your kids are born, like.
Right.
Like I want grandkids, right? Like.
Right. And then you're not going to want to you're going to be either too old to go out on, not too old, but you're not going to want to go out on trips. You're not going to want to go out, travel later.
Yeah.
You're going to be you're going to be like the snap, crackle, and pop, cereal box when you're getting up and moving around. Cause I mean, I'm already like that now. I'm 30, but
you're at Snap right now.
I'm at Snap. Yeah. Give me another year and I'll be at Crackle.
Oh man. Yeah. Like it's so like everybody's so now, and they just don't think of what it's going to be later on. Right.
Yeah.
Like if you're having kids at 40, like sorry, just how old are you going to be when, like, I don't even know. Like that's if you even have kids.
Exactly. I mean, you'll by the time you have grandkids, you'll be what, 70, almost 80?
Yeah. And some people don't live that long.
Right. I don't want to be, 80 and just having my first, grandkid and then like croak over like 2 days later.
Right.
Oh, I had my grandkid. Ugh.
Yeah. I want to, like, how old do you want to hit? Like, what do you think is a good age to not be like, oh, I've been here too long?
Oh, man. Honestly, I just want to live as long as I can, just see my kids grow up and my grandkids at least have a chance. I don't really have a good answer, good age, I guess, in a sense.
Right.
But I at least want to give it a good go.
Yeah. And maybe that's it. Yeah, go for it.
That is a tough question. You kind of sit. I mean, I had my first kid at 21. By the time my kids are all old enough to be out of the house, I'm gonna be in like my early 40s.
That's amazing.
So it's like I'm gonna be able to get out hopefully and do things with my kids. When they're grown up. And then at that point, if they're having kids as early as we are, as I am, I mean, I'll have, hopefully grandkid now mid 60s. I mean,
right.
I'll be able to at least have a good couple of years.
Yeah. And you've got a 7-year head start on me. So That's amazing. Like, I mean, I never would have thought that in 21. Obviously, I hadn't met my wife yet. So, I mean, can't have babies with a non-existent woman. And definitely not one that's not for me, And so, I mean, yeah, I was just in a different place. But I mean, like, yeah, like even just talking about the world's fathers, what would you say is like the secret to a father's success?
I always tell people all the time, as a father, just wing it.
Mm-hmm.
The best situations sometimes are just the wing it time of situations.
Right.
Just make the best of the situation and go with it. And if it turns out to be positive, it's positive. If it's negative, well,
right.
It's a learning situation.
Right. If anyone says that they're doing it right, they are definitely not being truthful.
No.
Like, nobody has it all together. It's either the kid is either you lucked out and you got a good kid, or you're just getting lucky. I don't
know. Yeah.
Right.
Oh man. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to. Huh.
I mean, it's not gonna, I feel like one thing isn't gonna change it all.
No. I mean, like, it's the little things that kind of stack up to the whole experience, I guess.
Right.
It's like the National Lampoon's Christmas, you stack up the whole car and you just go with it. And if something falls apart, it's, oh, well.
Right. There goes the car. Yeah.
We'll just there goes the car, but we still got each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's not spend too much on that. Like if there's a father out there who's losing hope, like what would you say to them now?
So it's always easy to kind of tell people don't give up. But it's not always easy to seek help.
Yes.
And my thing is for fathers who are in that mindset, please just, even if it's just a buddy who may not know exactly what's going on, sit down and let them listen. I mean, you never know where the next inspiration is going to come from. That's just going to cheer you up and just like you're going to hit the ground running. Yeah. I mean, it could be your own father, it could be your own mother, it could be your best friend who's had 6 kids. He's still trying to figure out what's going on, but you have at least one person in your world that you can sit down and have a conversation with and clear your mind, at least to a point. And that I hope will at least get you on a running start.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction, right? That question, like, if you are a friendless father, like you have no friends, then you'd lose hope. But if you had other people who are there to support you, who understand what you're going through, and they are there to listen to you, what can you not face?
And I'm one of those kind of guys where it's like even if somebody's off on the corner, I'll go over there and I'll talk to them. It is easy to kind of, it's easy to sit down and say, hey, how are you doing today? Yeah. Just take that moment. You never know what is going to happen. Like I do it with you guys. You do it with me. I mean, we like the father. It's like, some guys are having a rough day. It's like, you want to sit down, say, hey, what's up? It's like, oh, I am so glad you asked. I am doing so much better now.
Yeah, right. It's almost like a release valve of pressure.
Yeah. So it is one of those things where it's like, I'm all, and I tell you, I've told you before, it's like, even if I'm having one heck of a bad day, I sit down and I talk to one person and I am just, my problems instantly just go out the window, at least for a couple of minutes. And I focus on that one person.
Yeah.
Say, what's up? What can I help you with? My problems, no matter how big or small it is, my problems just got this much smaller and your problems just got this much bigger. But you are right there and I'm listening to you and I'm talking to you. Yeah. I don't care if you got a friend or you don't have a friend. Somebody is either going to reach out to you, or if you cry out, somebody's going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Community is
So
important. Yeah.
it is. Yeah. I mean, you don't push you don't push the hands that feed you away, because sometimes your community is those hands.
Yeah. Right. And you can't just wait till that moment to reach out for people. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta, yeah. And you've been doing that for sure, just showing up for people in a very real way, in spite of everything that you're going through. And that's what a noble father is, man. That you are literally the bearded embodiment of that, you know, for all of us. And so
I think I think my beard might be the face of the
yeah, you're the bearded division. We got some bald and painful and some lonely and yeah, military. Now we got, yeah, like we got a huge, you know, I always think back on the first 9 that came, and I think I'm inclusive of the 9 anyways. We had 9 people the first meeting, and it didn't really grow for a long time. It was just us, and I've been thinking about why that is, and I think there's a divine purpose that we were meant to be at that size for a while, because we were establishing the rapport, we were establishing the intimacy, and I feel like a family. Like, I don't know about you, like it just felt like there was nothing. Yeah.
It definitely had that dynamic. It definitely still does have that dynamic, even, you know. It's even just now, it's like, you know, we've added so many people, so many fathers, and, you know, since then, and like even now, it's like I still find myself drawn back to like just, you know, the 9 of us, and it's just like these guys.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
you know, I always feel like reaching out to everybody else too, but it's like as soon as I had my rounds, you know, like and you know, not even just the rounds, because I do care and I do reach out, you know.
Right.
So it's like, I guess rounds may not be the best way to put it, but as soon as I'm done focusing on those guys, it's like I am always just like laser focused on you guys even. And it's like I've never had that, I wouldn't say attachment, but I've never had the fellowship that I feel coming into this, because it's like we come together and we, you know, and not break bread, but we come together and we share, you know, some of the most intimate things with each other. And it's an interesting thing, because as men and as fathers, we don't like to do that sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
You know, or a lot of times, you know, so it's family.
Yeah. And I mean, it's we're deepening. We are deepening. I think that
Yeah.
this conversation with you, Aaron, has been one that's like, there's a lot more to the people than just what is happening in the day to day. And that really is the purpose of these conversations, is, you know, people are going to get to know you on a deeper level, and they're probably going to have deeper questions and things about they want to know about you. And and maybe even me. Just it deepens the community, and that's what we want, and that's kind of actually the direction that I want to go with this, because I do feel like the surface stuff it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know if you heard of there's this like article that came out, like these men that have been meeting for like 36 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, you can't just talk about every week. You got to go even deeper than that. And
Right.
That's really what we're about to, you know, what we're trying to build here. And we're only getting started. 50 people right now, even though maybe only like a handful of the people come out. It's like 20 maybe or so people that have come out more than at least once.
Yeah. It's definitely been one of those things where it's like I do look forward to every Thursday, like when we do the meetups.
Yeah.
You know, it is one of those, I do look forward to it when I have the ability to jump in. It's like, man, it's like you get that, you definitely get that feeling where it's like you are missed if you were not there.
Yeah. Right.
And it's interesting, because again, it's like, it's one of those things I've never had.
Yeah.
So
Right. We really saw a gap in there. It was just like, there's nothing like this out there that I know of, at least. There's men's groups that meet like this, but nothing really for fathers.
no. I mean, and even just as men, outside of being fathers, there's some things that we share, and it's just like it's yes, it can be contributed to being fathers, but even just as men in general, it does give a perspective on both aspects, not just being a father in general, which is
Right.
awesome, because
Yeah.
you curate some of, like, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, and I do feel, even though it's mostly geared, or if not all geared towards fathers, it does give you that ability to kind of think about, just on a deeper level, just being a man, and then it gives you a different dynamic on top of that after you start thinking about that, and it's just like, okay, I see the male aspect, but now what about the father aspect? And then it's like a ping pong. It's like you're bouncing back and forth.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're like almost like feeding off of each other, kind of like spiraling upwards with one another.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've only been like 5 months maybe?
Yeah.
Right? Can you imagine? We're not even half a year into this, and every single person that has come at one point is leading a very different life.
Mm-hmm.
There's things happening. And so, yeah, I mean, you don't have to plug that anymore. I'm sure people already understand like what this group is all about. And if there's anybody that's interested about it, feel free to reach out to Aaron or me. There's other people in the group. You can also, come check out the Thursday meetings. Those meetings are just unbelievable. Yeah,
it can definitely be slightly intimidating, but at the same time, it's more of a good intimidation, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the medicine you didn't know you needed.
Exactly.
That is probably like the best way to put it. I can't put it any other way, because it's so I don't know how do you say it, so primal. Like, we're meant as men to share these things, and that's one of those other things that we're saying against anti-man is like, we're not allowed to show our emotion. We're not allowed to be vulnerable with how we are feeling. We need to suck it up and don't be a pussy, or don't get your panties in a bunch, or whatever it is you want to femininely attach to it to attack men. It's like, no, like, real strength comes from openly sharing it, being vulnerable, and not being afraid of anybody's judgment of us, because our identity doesn't hinge on that. It doesn't hinge on what other people think of us, and if it does, then that is something to clue into. Sorry, I got really deep there.
No, you're good. So if anybody ever tells you otherwise and they don't want you to share, we'll smack them in the back of the head for you, all right?
Yeah. Or you know what? You just know that that's not a person that you want to have a community with. And that's one of the biggest lessons out of the group, is that we've created something that groups with like 50,000 plus members not touch us. They don't even come close.
There's no personal aspect to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We deal with a lot of these things, like, and I'm a mod in that group, the Dads Helping Dads group. And yeah, dads that are reaching out to other men's wives, and DMing them, and toxicity, and just like, it's just brutal. And it's a really sad world. I think if people actually got into a room and they actually expressed how they felt, there's love there. There's
oh yeah,
there's definitely something in there. Let's not get too wrapped up in that now. I want to continue our segments here. Like, this is the next segment, is word of mouth recommendations. I really want to just like give this kind of like this lighter mood thing. It's like, do you have any movies, TV shows, or documentaries that you would recommend to a father who's listening now?
Ooh.
Choose one. Choose a bunch. I mean, and if it helps their fatherhood, obviously the better.
So I was sitting there and I was watching oh man, what was that show called? It's one of the ones that came out recently. Obviously a lot of them are all musicals, but it's
hints. You gotta give me hints or else I can't help you. Who's in it?
It's a lot of it about music, just like guitar, and it's more like of a Spanish section. Oh man, what is this? What is it? I'm gonna
look it up.
I gotta look this up real quick.
And while you're on that, think of a board game or a video game you'd recommend to people.
Oh man, chess. If you really want to get to know your family, chess
Chess.
or Monopoly
Or Risk. I mean,
Risk is another one. Coco, the movie's Coco.
oh, okay, yeah, Coco.
That movie, like you, every time I watch it, I always seem to like get more into the aspect of family, or it's like, or like family changes, to meet the dynamic. It every time it's like it's a good movie by itself, but the family dynamic is there.
That's true. Yeah, I really feel like the prevailing theme in that is time with family, right? Yeah. So, fathers out there, Coco is the recommendation. Disney movie, I believe it is.
Yes.
Awesome. Chess is the board game that you recommended. Okay. How about food, candy, or drink?
Ooh. So I've found out that if you start them early, like the kids like the bubbly waters.
Okay. Like the soda water.
Yeah, except they're not sweetened, and like the kids are always like, "Oh, this is soda." It's like,
right.
We'll just go with that.
Right. It's a good healthy alternative.
My wife just chimed in. She's like, "Yeah, our kids believe that lie for like the first 4 years of their lives.
They believe that that's soda water.
Yeah, like that's soda. Pop. Yeah, just hello. There you go. Okay. Like I was out of focus there for a minute. Yeah, it just like they believe that was pop, and like we just, my oldest was like, "Yeah, soda," and we're just like, "All right, sure." So it's like when they actually had soda, they were just like, "What is this?"
Right, you can't go back. Yeah.
Right. And no, this is soda. And then everybody's like, no, this is soda. And then you get that look from your son where it's just like, you lied to me.
Right. Santa doesn't exist.
Where's my Easter Bunny candy?
Oh, man.
I know. My wife. Yeah, now my kids call it fuzzy water now.
Fuzzy water? Oh, that's
fuzzy
awesome.
water.
That's funny.
I don't know.
I just call it fuzzy from now on.
There you go. But yeah, it just mostly because of the bubbles. But yeah, no, like I guess that, or like my kids actually like, eating like handfuls of like cashews and peanuts and stuff, wow. A lot of the things, or like yogurt, stuff like that. My kids are weird. Like they like that
palate, yeah.
They do. Or like food, another like a normal food would be oh man, cabbage and kielbasa. They'll eat that like all day long, but most kids are like, "Ew, what's that?"
Kielbasa.
Yeah, it's like a Polish sausage.
Polish, it's like the ones you get from like kielbasa. Ooh, yeah, dude, those are delicious, man. I don't care what kind of sausage and where it's from. It's delicious.
I'm over there making them hungry now.
Oh, but, yeah. They're all
drooling. But yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like, just stuff like that. I mean, just, the kids, if they, in my opinion, if they don't know any better, that's what they're used to growing up. But, I just, anything like that. I mean, popcorn, kids, obviously they love popcorn. Yeah. I'm not a fan of popcorn, but the kids are like, "Dad, you don't like popcorn?" It's like, yeah, I don't know like
that. That's a good thing, because then they get more. Right. Like, you don't ever give your dad a bite of the burger. I mean, he'll take half of it if he could.
Well, my daughter's always like, "Dad, you don't want popcorn? I could have yours." It's like, all right.
That's cool.
But yeah, no, just like or like the other one was smoothies. I don't know what it is about smoothies, man. You hand your kid a smoothie and they're just like,
yeah, especially if there's chocolate in it, right?
Yes. Yeah. Or like chocolate and fruit. Like that was the one thing my daughter liked, was the chocolate and fruit one. So it's, oh man, go on about that like forever.
Yeah, food is endless. You're gonna take up everybody else's suggestions for that. How about a thought leader? No, go for it. How about what? You said, how about something?
Well, I mean, like, I guess what do you usually try and suggest as far as?
Man, I got some really far out food things that I recommend to people, and they're like, they'll judge me for it.
Yeah.
They'll cancel for it. I don't know if I should say it on the first interview. I'll just leave it to the listener's imagination. Yeah, what would I recommend for food, man? Like, man, I really like kettle cooked chips. I mean, that's the bane. That's the bane of my existence. I can do. Oh, you guys don't have this in America. All dressed chips. All dressed Ruffles chips.
All dressed.
And I'll look it up for you so that you know what it is.
What?
So all dressed chips are. It is. Think salt and vinegar, ketchup, and barbecue all rolled together. Like all known popular flavors all put together. And this is only something you can get in Canada. It's good. my kids pick it. So it is amazing.
I'm gonna have to like get some of that shipped over here to me just to try it now.
Well, I mean, I would. I don't know if it'll get there in one piece.
Oh no.
You want to like open the bag, it's on like one big crisp that's available. Fully intact.
It might be all crumbs by the time it gets here.
Yeah. Or maybe I have to like package it into a box and then put it into like a, one of those like bubble wrap bags or whatever.
Yeah.
Ship it over
Yeah, at that point.
You only have like two chips or something that are
all dressed chips.
Yeah.
Huh.
How far are you from the Canadian border? You could probably go and get it.
Oh man.
Seriously, any gas station. Yeah, I mean, I'd send you a bag, except I just think that once it gets there,
probably wouldn't be.
Or somebody at the mail thing,
not Canada Park. I went Canada in general. Canada. It's Canada Park, like 5 minutes away. What?
You have a Canada Park near you? Cool.
Apparently, like not even 5 minutes from me. Like, good Lord, what the heck? Toronto. Let me just do that. Well, from me to Toronto is like almost 10 hours.
Okay, yeah, that's too far.
Yeah.
Maybe I can bring it. Maybe whenever I come down, I can bring it. That'd be cool. We can talk about that later. What are we doing here? Thought leader you look up to.
Thought leader I look up to.
Yeah. Maybe an author even. Maybe somebody you like to listen to.
As weird as this is going to sound, actually, when I listen to your podcast, man, you get me thinking a lot.
Oh, man.
So you do kind of provoke that a bit. So I'm gonna throw that out there, and I'm 100%. I know you're getting the goosebumps over there, man.
Getting the goosebumps because that's actually like being a thought leader is something that I want to strive towards to becoming.
But yeah, 100% though. I do enjoy your podcast, and you do get me thinking, because I mean a lot of that stuff is, I listen to when I'm, when my wife and the kids are in bed, or like if I'm driving to work, or if I got a couple of moments at work, I get caught up on them, and it gets me thinking, and it puts me in a better mood, but it also puts me in a deeper thought process, even though it should probably not be while I'm at work. But
well, I appreciate the shout out there for sure. And that encourages me to keep being and going deeper, and you're making me feel good right now. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, no, that is 100% like authentic. Like, I will tell you straight out that you do give me that kind of that vibe.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And if anybody out there is looking for a good friend, Aaron is the guy, man. Doesn't matter what he's facing, he's loyal to a fault. It's crazy.
I appreciate that.
It feels like we always talk about it every session. Every meetup, we always bring it up. And, there's a reason you're number one. And there's a reason why we are having this conversation now. I think, it was intended that we would share this journey together. And I'm just so glad to be able to even be a part of your life, let alone, goodness, to be able to do these things together. It's amazing. We went 2 hours. We almost went 2 hours here.
Wow. Has it been real? Oh man. Wow.
We're not technically not done. The last segment that I really like to do is like, it's your time capsule. Like, I want you to do you have anyone you want to shout out first? I mean, you shout out your brother Randall. Your
Yeah,
dad a
I
bit.
mean, my parents. I mean, they obviously I want to shout them out all the time. They did the best that they can. And they're still trying to do their best.
Yeah.
With their second generation as far as like for me,
Right.
and then just fathers in general, and just do the best that you can. If you don't got that guy to kind of talk to and sit down with, reach out. By all means. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger or not. Somebody is going to reach out and reach back out to you and pull you back up on your feet.
Yeah.
And at least I hope somebody will, because if not, then they're missing an opportunity to help.
I like how the music got really epic for that.
I know, right?
For that segment. Actually, we're not done with this. I want you to, close off this episode. Perhaps say a few words, directly, directed at your kids, maybe to your wife, or even a message to yourself that you can reference back to later on.
Well, there's a couple of things. So it's like for me, it's just keep going, as I've been, again, I tell myself all the time, it's not all about me. It's about my family, about my kids, and getting them on the right path and seeing them grow up. Obviously you want to have fun, so have fun with it. But, I want to keep encouraging myself, even just day by day up, just get up, do your best. You're there just you exist for a reason, whether it was an oops, in your originally your parents' mind, or just, you were planned. I mean, you were there for a reason. You have something to live for. Get up and do your best. And then as far as my kids, it's just I want to see them grow, and love, and just be better than me. I want them to be able to help people out. I want them to be able to see the value in a person rather than just, the face value of somebody. I want them to be able to see the soul and the heart of somebody versus the flesh and blood that covers that. And I just, they deserve a lot, but I mean, obviously they're going to have to work for it, but yeah, they deserve a lot more than what I can even just give them by myself. They have to be able to discover the world and to thrive, even without dad, without mom. So I guess that would probably be what I'd want to share. And just in general, it's always a pleasure to know that you were, I guess, able to be thought about as being a father, or you have the experience to become a father, and you may not know it, but you won't know until you are. And let the love grow, grow as an individual, grow as a family, grow as a parent, and just let your kids lean on you when they need you the most. Because you never know when your kids are going to come around. Your kids might be having a rough day, but they may turn around and pull you back off, your butt, back on your feet.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be probably all of what I would want to share at the end of this episode. So, and I appreciate the time that you have given me actually to be on this episode.
Well, thank you. You're making the time too, and it was really just a conversation, and we let it flow freely. We did have some questions we wanted to talk about, and
yep.
We didn't hit all of them, but I mean, I think I can walk away with this and having deepened my understanding of fatherhood from somebody else's perspective, and that's exactly what we want with these. And
yep.
So for you listeners out there, give Aaron's What Griffs podcast a listen, because he's got that voice, and you can tell just the way that he shares. It just comes out so, like, I mean, it's really, both of us were just flowing together. There was no, we didn't prepare very much. We were just kind of went straight into it. I mean, we only talked for like 5 minutes before we hit the record button, and so, by no means is this perfect, and this is a lesson for both of us, even just to take imperfect action. And so if you know anybody who could benefit from this, definitely share the episode with them. And if you're able to, if you're on an Apple podcast, or, do rate and review our collective podcasts. Aaron is going to be uploading this to What Griffs, and I'm going to be uploading it to mine. And so we are going to learn and, speak to each other's audiences. And this is only the first of hopefully many episodes together.
So guys, make sure to follow this guy, Noble Father podcast. This guy is a good guy, and he definitely deserves to listen.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, without further ado, we are on 1 hour and 57 minutes. Actually, 1 hour and 50 something minutes probably. And that is a close. As you can tell, it got really, really dark in our collective places. And so this is Theo and Aaron, and we are signing off. Take care.